respect for security guards, but you're not likely to be paid enough money to put your life on the line to protect prawn sandwiches. It's not like you're a soldier or a police officer. But this mum, this I don't know if she was a mum, but this woman of roughly my age couldn't actually quite believe. She said, "What are you going to do? You can't just let him walk away. Look, look!" And yet, what would you do? And part of the reason why you do nothing is because if you do something, you become one of the 1,300 incidents a day of violence and abuse being directed at shop workers. But I'm particularly interested in the more like the stuff that Brett described, where you're not trying to catch crooks. You're literally just doing your job. And the great British public has in recent years become, well, that license to obnoxious, that license to be obnoxious seems to have been issued to an awful lot of people. So you work in a shop, you have done for years. What's it like to be on the receiving end of violence or abuse from someone who's not a crook or a criminal? Just, do you see what I mean? Like an escalation of a normal customer to a point where you can't quite believe what you're expected to endure. So look, trying to stop a shoplifter and getting spat at is disgusting, but it's dog bites man territory, right? It's expected and expectable, if that's a word. But trying to sell someone a nice pair of trousers and getting spat at, that's man bites dog territory. That is not something you would expect to happen. So what's that like? And crucially, why do you think it's happening? Particularly at this breakneck speed of the last couple of years. 0345 6060973 is the number that you need. Anne in Edinburgh writes, please tell us about the pyjamas and the Baroness, James. Ozzy and I are dying to know. Have you written Ozzy and I are dying to know, or you are an Aussie and you are dying to know, Anne? I don't know. I may tell you the story. I'll check with Keith on whether or not he thinks it's suitable for your delicate ears. But I'm telling you now, someone got quite close. They said, was this aristocrat that brought her son's pyjamas back to your shop for a refund, was she the Baroness of Skidderminster, by any chance? Close, but no. Henry's in Stratford. Henry, what would you like to say?
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call, James.
You're very welcome,
this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. I've worked in security for several years, and it's a regular occurrence to see potentially people who are affected by the habit of drugs, alcohol, or just stealing for the want to have something. Consistently, I've seen people who are, or who they say are affected by the cost of living crisis, where they are stealing food, baby formula, whatever it may be, supplies to get them by. When I was doing security in a well-known sports retailer, I won't mention the name, but they regularly had people attempting to steal football jerseys, footballs, you name it, they try and take it, presumably to resell.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound ungrateful. I'm familiar with that, and we've tracked the exponential rise in it. How long have you been doing the job, give or take?
4 years.
Only 4. So you've never really known it any different, or have things got worse in the course of those 4 years?
I'd say coming into COVID and the lockdowns, after COVID, you can understand why. However, going into it, because people were such in a stressful situation where there was less of what we needed or what we wanted, and so the frustration was taken out on the shopkeepers, the store staff,
That's
and
really
the security.
interesting. So it's almost as if we became de-civilised during lockdown.
In a sense, yes.
Because I got a message, oddly, while you were talking, from somebody who has their own shop. They say, we barred more customers for abusive behaviour last year than we had in the previous 10 years combined. People get very weird about clothes. They certainly do, but they
tell you how many people I've tried to buy from stores I've worked for, James.
Are you allowed to?
Yes. Work with the management within the stores.
But that's for shoplifting, isn't it? I mean, I'm sounding like a right pain in the bum, Henry. I do apologise, but that's kind of the dog bites man territory, the theft, which we know. It's that. So this text is from someone who works in a smart part of Cheshire, in the kind of retail environment where you really wouldn't expect to be barring customers. So it's more that obnoxious normal customer, the way people speak to you, even if you haven't just caught them nicking a leg of lamb? Has that changed in 4 years?
Worse.
Yeah.
Increasingly worse. I can say to you quite honestly, it is the younger generations, I'd say from 15 years of age to, let's say, 28 years of age,
Yes.
that are the worst. The constant swearing, abuse, comments about race, height, weight, talking about someone's sexuality, gender, and the concern is that because there's not enough police, the police don't respond to calls.
And that means the next time they do it, they'll go a little bit further. And it is people like you who are very much on the front line. I always try to find a quote from Thucydides at this point. I can never find it. It's from about 500 years BC when he's talking about the younger generation. So we always, and I'm guilty as well, Henry, we always have to take it with a little pinch of salt, that they're much worse now than they were in my day. In my day-itis, I think we called it, didn't we, earlier this year? But or late last year. But there is something there. The idea of something having changed. You know what my big thing is? People who got their phones on public transport without wearing headphones, whether they're listening to music, watching TV, or having a conversation. I accept the inconvenience of having to listen to your end of a conversation if you're blessed with quite a loud voice and you're having a conversation on public transport. But in recent months, it's the other end of the conversation that I'm getting as well. It's extraordinary. Henry, thank you. I have got a game for you. So I mentioned the phrase Brexit means Brexit. Why is it in the news today? I've got 3 reasons, okay? Is Brexit means Brexit in the news? Because A, Mark Francois has announced the imminent release of the 2nd volume of his memoirs, and Brexit means Brexit is the title. Is it B, because the younger generation that Henry just referred to routinely shouts Brexit means Brexit on the football pitch before going in with a tackle that has no intention whatsoever of getting the ball and is designed solely to hobble the opponent? Or is it C, Craig Andrews, 31, from Dundee, is having laser removal of his Brexit means Brexit tattoo after getting sacked, or rather losing his job, because the company he worked for has gone under as a direct consequence of Brexit? So why is Brexit means Brexit in the news today? Is it A, because it's the title of the 2nd volume of Mark Francois's memoirs? Is it B, because it's what children now shout up and down the country when they're going in 2-footed in a football tackle designed to hurt the opponent and not get anywhere near the ball? Or is it C, because a 31-year-old man in Dundee is having his Brexit means Brexit tattoo removed by laser after losing his job as a consequence of Brexit? A, B or C? Text me your answer to 84850. I'll tell you the answer before home time today, if I remember. Grant's in Kettering. Grant, what would you like to say?
Morning, James. Nice to speak to you again, mate.
A, B or C? A, B or C?
I'm going to go, I think it's a combination of A and C myself.
Interesting. You're not allowed...
From what I just caught.
You're not allowed combinations, but I'll take it on board. Go on, what do you want to say? What did you ring in for?
So, I've worked in retail most of my life. Like a lot of people that work in retail, I've fallen into it. It's just kind of something I did during college, like you mentioned previously, like one of your callers mentioned previously.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily say it's from Brexit myself or from the referendum. For me, I've seen an uptake in abuse on staff, definitely coming out of the lockdowns.
Yeah.
People seem a lot more entitled. They seem to look down on shop workers and hospitality as well.
Yeah.
Those of us that work in those industries as lesser than them. That we work in these places because we're not very intellectual,
Right.
and we're not serving society in a way that's deemed responsible or making a difference. And that's just the impression that I've got from a lot of people. I was just saying to you, your research, it was only the other day I was having a woman having a right go at me in my store, and it started getting personal.
Right. Why?
So
Can we back up a bit? What was the point of contention?
We couldn't supply something that we tried to get hold of. We let them know that we couldn't do it in the end.
So a perfectly normal and innocuous scenario, you would think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And another customer had to intervene because it was getting to the point where this woman, like I say, she was becoming personally abusive towards me, and I can take a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But soon as anyone starts abusing my staff or myself,
yeah,
I step up a bit and, I try and evacuate or eject them from the store. But you can't put your hands on people to move them out.
No.
Police won't do anything. If you're part of a security network, they only do a certain amount because they're tied by laws. And again, if they touch people, they are done. I mean, I've had people throw things at me and try and attack me.
Can I ask you, what branch, you don't have to tell me, but what sort of retail are you in? What are you selling? Can I ask?
It's clothing. We deal with clothing. It's men's fashion.
I thought you were going to say something like she needed a big end for her car, or she wouldn't be able to get home without the thing that you'd not been able to. So it was just an item of clothing that you hadn't been able to order in, and she starts effing and jeffing at you.
Yeah,
How personal did she get? How personal did she get?
Very. She started telling me I was diseased, started mocking me for the outfit I was wearing, my appearance, and you just laugh it off because it's just these things that you get.
You do and you don't. You do and you don't. I know.
Yeah, I get what you mean, but for me, it's just water off a duck's back. Do you know what I mean?
I do know
we shouldn't have to take it.
It doesn't have to be, and it won't be for everybody. I'll ask you a question quite diplomatically, if I may. Was she normal to start with, or
no?
Right.
No.
So she came in. She was trouble from the start.
It was the third time she'd been into my particular store. We had the conversation the second time about trying to get hold of it and not being able to.
Yeah.
The third time she came in to actually try and trick us to see if we were then still supplying this or not.
Because she thought you were lying to her about not being able to get hold of something.
Possibly. And this isn't someone you would expect it from. This woman, she was of pension age, I would suggest.
Well, that's what I meant by normal. That's what I meant. She didn't come in stinking in methylated spirits with her trousers around her ankles or anything like that. No, that's what I meant. She appeared respectable. I don't want to sound snobbish.
For all intents and purposes, you wouldn't expect this if you saw someone like that walking down the street, being that kind of it, but it's not going to get better because the police just don't do anything. And when you hear about it in the news where the thefts and the police forces don't really do much when shops report thefts these days. I know a lot of businesses that don't even bother reporting it. Most businesses these days will count it in theft.
Yeah, and what are you going to do then? Well, next time you're confronted with someone who's in the middle of filling their boots, you'd almost be foolish to get involved, given that you're not going to get support or backup from anywhere, although you're probably going to get into trouble for your shrinkage rates. Go on, take care, mate. I know it's water off a duck's back, but equally, you don't deserve that, and you're allowed to be upset by it. You don't have to put all your effort into convincing yourself that you're not, because everybody hurts, as R.E.M. so famously observed. Thank you. Up next, I don't know if you remember, did Henry go to it for us? To that? It's so hard to keep up with these fringe hard right factions building up in the Tory. Of course he went to it, because that's when we went through the list of all the fringe hard right factions springing up in the Tory party. There's the EBB and the JCV, in out, the Shake It All About party, the in out party, the out party, your left leg in, your right leg out, all of that party, all of these different factions. But the newest one was the one that Lewis Goodall went to when Jacob Rees-Mogg was very, very rude to him after Lewis pointed out his epic hypocrisy. And they were called the Popcorns, weren't they? The Popcorns. Well, my friend and inspiration in that ways, Peter Gagan, the investigative journalist at Organised Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, also is far too modest to remind you, the purveyor of a rather splendid Substack to which you can subscribe, has been looking at the funding behind this latest new grouping of hard-right agitators. And the last time Peter was in the studio, I don't think he's in the studio this time, but the last time he was in the studio, it prompted was it a 2-year investigation by Ofcom into allegations from the Institute of Economic Affairs that we had misrepresented them? No prizes for guessing who won. I'll give you a clue. It was me and Peter.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
Call me cynical. I don't believe a word of it.
Straight to the point.
Safe to say you don't know, do you?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Wake up. We've heard this all before.
Listen on your radio and Global Player, the official LBC app.
Share the love this Valentine's at Morrison's with a 24-pack of Ferrero Rocher for $5.99 with more card exclusives.
These words and her daughter Anna desperately pursue every legal avenue to try to get her sentence commuted, delayed, appealed, on the basis of Mary's age and gender. Anna pleads for an audience with President Johnson, but it's in vain. He orders that the executions go ahead the following day, the 7th of July, 1865. It's an unbearably hot, humid day in Washington, D.C. The 4 condemned prisoners to listen to the scaffold being built and the drop tested. But even the hangman thinks that a last-minute reprieve must be on its way. With this in mind, he delays proceedings for 4 hours. In the end, though, Mary Surratt is hanged with her 3 fellow conspirators at 1:22 p.m. She is the first white woman to be executed by the United States government. Evie, the Department of War commissioned a photographer to document the executions. We've got them here, and they are very disturbing to look at. There's something so unbelievably horrible and distressing about seeing the dark dress of a woman. That is Mary Surratt hanging there. And it seems to me that this was done so that people will be able to witness her punishment, if you like. But it also seems to me that this backfired as a tactic. There was revulsion. The public mood changed towards Mary Surratt. For many people, she became a martyr. She was a mother. She was murdered. Do you have my feeling, Evie, that this was a government who went too far in their thirst for vengeance?
They've definitely rushed towards the execution. Today, if somebody's put on death row, it takes a very long time. So to have a verdict and to do it the next day, it's extremely rushed. And I do think that that backfired on them. I think if they had taken their time to verify certain things and to show people that, hey, we really looked at this, we exhausted this, this is someone who did conspire, we know this for sure to be true, but their haste and their rush, and it came off as, bringing that word back again, vengeance rather than justice.
So interesting. Now, I'm keen to explore the legacy of Mary Surratt's crime. I asked Nikki Taylor to go to the Surratt Tavern in Maryland, about 20 miles from Washington, D.C. It's the place where John Wilkes Booth came to pick up supplies after shooting the president. And it's now a museum run by the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. Nikki's latest book is about the lethal resistance of enslaved women. So she was particularly keen to find out about the enslaved people held by Mary Surratt.
I'm here with Veronica Gallardo, the director of the Surratt House Museum, and also with Logan Wills Elizondo, who's one of the museum interpreters. So let me describe the house. It's a 2-story farmhouse. And what really struck me is that there are 10 rooms, which means it says a lot about the wealth of this family at the time that they built it. Veronica, this museum has focused on the history of Mary Surratt, including the role of the place in the conspiracy for the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. But with your leadership, it started to take on a new focus.
So today, we are addressing the previous racist interpretation of the house. We will utilize this site and its resources for a more honest interpretation of the legacy of the American Civil War and how it still impacts us today.
Specifically regarding the history of enslavement, the Surratts enslaved at least 8 individuals here, about 15 over the course of their lives.
As a historian of African American history, of course, I'm intrigued with your new focus on this. And it's just shocking that that's part of her legacy. A lot of her wealth was also tied to the enslaved people she owned, right?
We do know that the Surratts did rent. Also, they were enslaved people that were rented to them.
Rachel Hawkins, she was the enslaved chef. She would have been rented here for a period of about 6 years before emancipation. She would have been doing most of the cooking and cleaning for not just the family, but anybody else in this place. People eating in the tavern, sleeping in boarding rooms. Would have been doing quite a lot of very difficult work along with a couple of the other enslaved women here.
So I'm really interested in the repercussions of Abraham Lincoln's assassination, especially for African Americans. As you both know, too many people in Maryland and beyond were unwilling to imagine an America that fully integrated African Americans. And so we're still in the process, even today, still trying to obtain the promises of the U.S. Constitution, the promises of the American Revolution on behalf of African Americans for civil rights and justice today.
We really want to address the impact of Lincoln's death and sharing those stories and that history to our visitors so we can actually take some action ourselves to address the legacy of white supremacy, which I believe the Surratt family represented. We can have conversations about these topics that society will be better off.
And finally, bearing in mind the tortured legacy of Mary Surratt, how do you think she should be remembered?
She should be remembered for who and what she was: an enslaver, a Confederate sympathizer, and a traitor. But her memory shouldn't be the only one, nor is the most important one at this museum.
That is very powerful, very powerful.
That really gives a sense of the scale of the consequences of what Mary Surratt did in killing Lincoln. Eddie, what do you take from the story of Mary Surratt?
I was amazed, and I think don't stereotype people because you don't know what somebody is capable of.
I've just been thinking what I've learned from you today. You've talked a lot about not using stereotypes and not making assumptions. You've completely made me question some of my own assumptions today. To me, there's something pleasingly countercultural about Mary Surratt's venturing into a man's world and undermining the domestic image of Victorian womanhood. And I suspect that really got under the skin of her prosecutors. Mary Surratt's case has a chilling resonance today, I think, because it reminds us of the all-too-present danger of political violence in a deeply divided American nation. I can't feel much sympathy for Mary. She was a slaveholder, and her death really stems from her refusal to accept the ending of slavery. And Lincoln's assassination has had this awful legacy for African Americans, for whom it swept away hopes of freedom and equality. And that's something that still echoes today. Well, a huge thank you to Evie Pomparas, Nikki Taylor, Alex Wood, Veronica Gallardo, and Logan Wills Elizondo. Next time on Lady Killers, we head to a lonely farm in Devon, where a young servant is found dead in her bed. If you want to know even more about how we bring these fascinating stories to life for this podcast, you can join Roz and I for an exclusive behind-the-scenes chat about what it takes to make Lady Killers. Go to bbc.co.uk and search for Lady Killers, where you can follow the links to the Open University.
Lady Killers with Lucy Worsley was produced by Jane Greenwood. The editor is Julia Habor. It's a Story Hunter production for BBC Radio 4. Now, before the news, with a look ahead to Moneybox Live this afternoon, here's Felicity Hammer.
Today we're asking, when do you want to retire? And when do you think you can stop work?
Yeah, I think I'll probably be looking away to that drop.
One think tank says the state pension age will need to rise to 71. Another says we'll need more money than ever just for a moderate retirement. So are you on track? Maybe you do a physical job and you're worried about your ability to keep working. Perhaps you love what you do and want to work as long as possible. Get in touch now. You can email us on moneybox@bbc.co.uk. Please include a phone number. And listen to Moneybox Live as we ask, can you afford to retire? just after 3 o'clock today.
BBC News at midday. Labour has insisted it will block people who are not fit to be MPs after 2 of its election candidates were suspended following remarks they made about Israel at a meeting. The party's leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is facing criticism for not immediately suspending Azhar Ali, who'd been the Labour candidate in the Rochdale by-election at the end of this month. Another candidate, Graham Jones, who was also at the meeting, has also been suspended, throwing his candidacy for the Lancashire seat of Hyndburn into doubt. Stephen Silverman from the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism thinks the row shows that Labour hasn't completely rooted out the problem.
There appear to have been, plenty of people there who are Labour Party members, activists, representatives, and if the Labour Party is committed to really purging itself of the stain of anti-Semitism, you would have expected some of those people to have spoken up. I think there is a case for investigating what went on at that meeting. Once all the information is available, decisions need to be made about what action should be taken.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has insisted that the government's plan to bring down inflation is working, despite the annual rate remaining unchanged from December to January. Official figures show that an increase in the energy price cap was offset by falls in food and furniture, keeping the headline figure at 4%. The data also shows the first monthly fall in food prices since September 2021. Labour said inflation remained higher than the Bank of England's target of 2%, with millions still struggling with the cost of living. Ukraine's armed forces claim to have sunk another Russian landing ship in the Black Sea. The Cesar Kulikov was reportedly hit by drones off the coast of occupied Crimea. There's been no immediate response from the Kremlin. Our correspondent James Waterhouse sent this report from Kiev.
Kiev is claiming to have hit one of Russia's landing ships with several naval drones which were packed with explosives. Footage online appears to show a column of smoke rising off the coast of occupied Crimea. If confirmed, it would be the second time in almost as many months that Ukraine has destroyed a ship of this size in the Black Sea. Moving soldiers and equipment by water is the most efficient way for Moscow to supply forces in southern Ukraine. Strikes like this are part of Kiev's long game by trying to cut Russian supply lines. The story on the front lines further north is a different one, with tactical retreats being considered by Ukrainian generals in some areas.
The Secretary-General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, says he expects a record number of member states to spend 2% of their GDP on defence this year. This is the amount required by the Security Organisation's charter. Last week, Donald Trump said that if elected, he wouldn't come to the aid of allies who didn't spend enough, and he would instead encourage their aggressors. At a meeting of defence ministers in Brussels, Jens Stoltenberg said there had been a big improvements.
This year, I expect 8 allies to spend 2%.
He said both the UK and the European Union had announced their support packages for the next year, and it was absolutely crucial America did the same. Train drivers belonging to the ASLEF union at 5 rail operators were voted to continue strike action for another 6 months. Chiltern, C2C, East Midlands, Northern and TransPennine railways will be affected as part of a long-running dispute about pay and conditions. BBC News.
This is BBC Radio 4. You might like to know that this afternoon on Radio 4, the radio critic Gillian Reynolds will be paying her tribute to BBC DJ Steve Wright, whose death was announced yesterday. That's in the media show, which is live this afternoon at 4:30. But now Radio 4, you and yours, with Peter White.
Hello, welcome to Radio 4's consumer programme. Today, what's going on with Ryanair and the travel booking sites who've decided to stop selling their flights? Could the consumer benefit from this standoff? The fitness tracker sending customers' blood pressure through the roof?
The operator in Fitbit has said that They could have stayed there in an hour talking in circles. There was nothing more they could do there, and they ended the call.
Finding out what's going on there, and when the fun stops, stop. That's the gambling industry's message, but callers to addiction helplines keep on rising. And why is it that we can sign up for a product online easily enough, but not always cancel it with the same ease? You've been asking, we've been investigating. And the generation that won't stop dancing.
I think we can give some of the young people a run for their money. I mean, obviously we won't be able to walk tomorrow, but what the hell?
Well, could they save the UK's battered nightclubs? We'll be discussing that later. You can contact the programme, email you and yours at bbc.co.uk. On social media, use the hashtag you and yours, or you can text 84844. But first, a row has been rumbling away for years now between Ryanair and some of the biggest online travel companies. In the latest twist, Ryanair was forced to cut its profit forecast and discount fares after the travel sites suddenly stopped selling the airline's tickets. So what's behind this long-running dispute? When might it be resolved? And more importantly for us, I guess, as consumers, how has it been impacting passengers? Martin Alcock is the Director of Travel Trade Consultancy, which offers strategic advice to businesses in the travel sector. Martin, first of all, I mean, why are relations between Ryanair and these online travel companies so strained?
Afternoon, Peter. Well, I think to understand that you probably do have to go back into the history of structurally how this has all come to pass. I mean, your listeners will be very familiar with a traditional package holiday, you know, back in the day, really something the UK invented, where you would go into a high street travel agent, you would book an off-the-shelf package, and it would be usually put together by a tour operator. Really, when the kind of rise in the prominence of the internet first came on the radar, you had low-cost airlines, these no-frills airlines, of which Ryanair is the biggest and most well-known, arguably. But you also had hot on their heels this rise in the prominence of these online travel agents, the OTAs that we call them. And really what they are is a marketplace that I think together with the low-cost airlines kind of made package holidays more affordable, but they also introduced a lot more flexibility and choice. And so customers could sort of dynamically package their own. They didn't have to take something off the shelf, they could put together their own arrangements. And so really it's at the heart of all of this dispute, and as you mentioned, it's been going on for well over a decade now. It's really a difference in opinion as to who's delivering what value to that process and that supply chain. So the OTAs would argue they're delivering choice and value and flexibility, as well as the wraparound kind of consumer protection coverage that the ATOL badge gives them. Ryanair have a very different view, and you know, you'll have read Michael O'Leary's comments. You know, lots of colourful language, but broadly he leaves you with no uncertainty as to what he thinks. He calls them pirates. He says they add additional fees, and he says they're parasites sucking money off consumers.
So he's arguing basically, why not buy them off? You buy them off us, you'll get just as good a deal. That's basically what he's saying.
Exactly, yeah. and he would argue that quite right. If you come to Ryanair, that's where you get the best price. And really, so for about a decade, we've been having this cat and mouse game where Ryanair and the OTAs would try to kind of outdo each other and stay one step ahead from a technology point of view. So the OTAs would have some very sophisticated technology to pull the flight data onto their platform, what you might have heard of as screen scraping. They use single-use credit cards with constantly changing credit card numbers to try and avoid dissent. Ryanair would then get wise to it and throw up a technological roadblock. And really that's you know, the point that you made about OTAs taking them off sale. This is the very latest example of this, where this customer verification process Ryanair has introduced.
Right, that verification procedure, which has caused quite a problem for customers, including Kirsty Graham, who's a listener from Paisley in Scotland. She's been caught in the middle of all this. Kirsty, tell us what happened to you.
Oh, hi Peter. Well, we use the Skyscanner website really because it gave us the convenience of seeing all our flight options in the one place.
Yeah.
Because we live within striking distance of 2 or 3 airports, and we knew the destination we wanted to get to, and it allowed us to see all the flights that flew there from central Scotland, and the flight times, and it let us tailor our package to dates and times that suited us. So we ended up booking Ryanair flying out at a different airline coming back because it had better flight times. And then we received an email from Ryanair the next day asking us to verify